Hello, boys and girls. It's Miss Debbie again. And we finally getting around to one more chapter of Gifted Hands, the Ben Carson story. We are now in chapter 6, entitled Temper, Temper. From the time he was 8 until he was 14, Ben had clung to the dream of becoming a missionary doctor. But he'd decided he'd lived in poverty long enough, and instead of becoming a missionary doctor, he'd become a psychiatrist instead. Ben didn't know any psychiatrist, but on television, they all looked rich. They lived in fancy mansions and drove Jaguars and worked in big, plush offices. And all they had to do was talk to crazy people all day long. I seem to be talking to crazy people all day long already, Ben thought. This is going to work out extremely well. Ben started reading Psychology Today magazine every month and began making new plans. He'd still be a doctor, just a different kind. There was, however, one major obstacle to Ben becoming a doctor of any sort. One day, during the time when Ben wanted expensive clothes, his mother gave him a new pair of pants. Ben looked at them and told her, "I will not wear those. They're the wrong kind." "What do you mean, the wrong kind?" his mother asked. She had just gotten home from work and she was tired. "You need new pants. Wear these." "No!" Ben yelled, and he threw the pants at his mother. Sonia quietly folded the pants and laid them across the back of a kitchen chair. "I cannot take them back. They were on special." "I don't care. I won't wear them. They're not what I want." "Benny," said his mother, "we do not always get what we want." "I will!" yelled Ben, and he raised his right arm, and his hand flew toward his mother. Curtis, who had been watching, grabbed Ben from behind and wrestled him away from their mother. Whew! Ben was usually a good kid. He seldom got into trouble, but he was definitely having trouble with his temper. He didn't get angry easily, but when he did, he completely lost control. Even now, after almost hitting his mother, Ben did not want to admit to himself that he had a serious problem with anger. One day, Ben hit a boy in the hallway at school, and because he had a lock from his locker in his hand at the time, the blow opened a 3-inch gash in the other student's forehead. Ben ended up in the principal's office. Another time, Ben got angry and threw a rock at a kid. He broke the boy's glasses and bloodied his nose. Each time something like that occurred, Ben brushed it off. "I didn't mean to hurt anybody," he would think. "I'm a good kid. I can handle my temper. It's not really a problem." Then one day something happened that Ben could no longer ignore, and it changed his life forever. He and his friend Bob were listening to the radio at Bob's house when Bob leaned over and changed to another station. Ben flipped it back. Bob switched stations again, and suddenly Ben lost control. He grabbed the camping knife that he carried in his pocket, snapped the blade open, and lunged at Bob's stomach. The blade hit Bob's large metal belt buckle and broke. Ben had been so angry, he could have sliced open Bob's belly. Bob could have been lying at Ben's feet, bleeding to death. Ben could have been charged with murder. He could have spent the rest of his teen years in juvenile detention. He was very fortunate that knife had hit that buckle. Bob looked at Ben, too shocked to say anything. Ben muttered, I'm sorry, and dropped the knife handle and ran home. Once there, Ben locked himself into the bathroom and sank to the floor. I tried to kill my friend, he thought. I must be crazy. Only a crazy person would kill a friend. He squeezed his eyes shut, but that didn't keep him from saying, over and over in his mind, what had just happened. His hand, the knife, the broken blade, Bob's surprised and horrified face. For hours, Ben sat there remembering. He felt sick. He felt miserable. Sweat dripped down his back. He was disgusted with himself. And then he remembered to pray. In that small bathroom, he finally understood that he had a serious problem with his temper. And he realized he couldn't control his temper by himself. He needed help. He needed God's help. Lord, Ben prayed, you've got to help me. Please take this temper away. Now, by this time, Ben had been reading Psychology Today for a year, and he had learned that a person's temper is a personality trait, and that people have to accept their personality traits. Usually, you can't change them. But Ben knew that he would never achieve his dream of becoming a doctor if he continued to have such problems with his temper. Lord, he persisted, please change me. You promise in the Bible that if I ask anything in faith, you will do it. And I believe that you can change me. Ben slipped out of the bathroom and got a Bible. And back on the bathroom floor, he opened the Bible to Proverbs. The first verses he saw were about anger, and how angry people have nothing but trouble. These Bible verses seem to be written just for him. One verse that Ben read over and over was Proverbs 16:32. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit is better than he who takes a city. It was as if God was talking straight to Ben. After he had read and prayed a while, Ben was filled with peace. He stopped crying. His hands quit shaking. And he realized God had answered his prayer. He had been in that bathroom for 4 hours. But when Ben came out, he knew that God had done something in his heart, that he had been changed. Ben had made his decision to trust God, to become a Christian and be baptized when he was 8 years old. But after those 4 hours in the bathroom when he was 14, Ben's faith became personal and heartfelt in a way it had not been before. He began reading the Bible and praying every day. Ben also realized that he didn't need to be afraid of anything, that the same God who had changed his heart that day in the bathroom was the one who created the universe. He realized that God was all-powerful and could do anything. Ben's belief that the Lord wanted him to be a doctor became stronger than ever, and Ben Carson never again had trouble with his temper. And that was chapter 6.